If you've got poor executive functioning, like me, I'm pretty sure you will have already searched many times for ways to organise your life. But there are so many tools out there, so many different apps, methods, that it can get pretty overwhelming. And while many of these methods may work for the average person, a neurodivergent person may struggle with them. The problem is, even with the right system in place, my brain still gets overloaded. I still forget things, and actually it's important to remember that there is no magic wand that will make an autistic or ADHD person suddenly organised. It doesn't work like that. So accepting that will get you a long way, trust me. And in my lifelong struggle to get my life together, I have almost obsessively researched so many different methods, and I've finally sort of come to the point where I understand which methods kind of work for me, and more importantly, why they work. You asked for it, so I'm going to tell you about my full system for organising, planning, remembering, and doing. It's kind of the illegitimate love child of bullet journaling, get things done method, Kanban method, and straightforward automation. We'll call it Bajaga Terkamshan method. This is the second video in a 3-part mini-series on executive functioning, which has been sponsored by the lovely people at Tiimo, the scheduling app for autistic and ADHD brains. Tiimo has become a crucial part of my system, which I will discuss later in this video. And if you want to find out more, there's a link in the description box below. So frequent viewers will know that I like to disclaim things at the beginning and sometimes middle and end of my videos, in anticipation of all the people who will no doubt say,
well, that's not going to work for me.
I know this might not work for everyone, and to be honest, I don't really expect anyone to copy this whole system exactly. I know it has a really catchy name, but I hope that you will find value in me addressing the problems that I have and the ways that I solved them. And there might be a few different ways that could potentially work for you. Also, not all neurodivergent brains are the same. They're kind of divergent by definition. I'm extremely visual, and if I don't see something, I tend to forget about it, especially with regards to its position in the space-time continuum. And that obviously informs all the methods that I've chosen, for better or for worse. You can also probably expect me to change things up in the future as I evolve my system. Undiagnosed ADHD. But now that I've analysed each step, even if I change the tools, the system itself still kind of remains the same. So that is quite helpful for me to know. More knowledge about yourself is always useful, right? So this system really relies upon a weekly reset afternoon or day or evening, which I usually do on Sunday evenings, but I will often forget and do on Monday morning, which I don't recommend. It's nice to get it done before the week starts. I always try to think to myself that it's about progress and not about perfection. It's not about sticking to something so rigidly that you set yourself up to fail. And then you think, well, why bother with any of it and stop everything? Not that I've done that in the past. But it's more about implementing systems that you can keep coming back to if you've had an overwhelming week or something, and you can just keep getting back on track again and again and again, time after time, and it does get easier. I'm sure there's an idiom like, it's not about how many times you fall off the horse, but about how many times you get back on it? I don't know. You guys know I'm not good at remembering idioms, and I'd love to hear your favourite idiom in the comments below. Are we the nerdiest place on YouTube yet? If not, why? Let's now get an overview of the system that I've developed. There are 4 parts to this system: capture, sync, plan, and automate. Step 1 is capture. The conundrum of having a neurodivergent brain is allegedly having very good working memory and yet still forgetting everything anyway. Some of us, of course, might have poor working memory. It can go either way, really. But either way, things get forgotten. For me, it was particularly difficult to try to unlearn the habit of trying to hold everything in my head. So I had to remind myself and to train myself to write things down and poof, let things go. Easier said than done. But because my working memory was so good, I relied on my brain to hold it all in, and that's not feasible. There's a lot going on in there. So for the capture step, you really just need an app or a notebook that you can just brain dump into. And I'm not really talking about the appointments and stuff here, that's a little bit different, or things I have to do that day. I'm talking about the big kind of mess of crap and jumbles up inside us and bugs us when we're trying to focus on something else because we think, well, I must remember to do that. And because you're thinking about that, you're not thinking about the thing you really need to do. So write it down. Digital, paper, whatever. Just get it out of your head. I use Google Keep for this. It is taggable and searchable and color codable, which I find very useful. And every week I go through the notes that I've made and delete, archive, clean up, and generally organize all of these thoughts so that everything is up to date for the next week. And this way all my thoughts have been processed. And this is really powerful, the mental act of saying, if there's a thought that's bugging me and I don't need it right now, it goes in here to remind me later when I do my reset, so I won't forget it, but I have a set time and day for dealing with it. Because just writing things down will lead to a big mess if it doesn't get sorted. And especially if it relies on you doing something later, that fuzzy period of time often referred to as not now. So getting it down is one thing, but scheduling the time to process it is equally important. Moving on to step 2, which is sync. Now through the years I have tried so many things, but I have come to the conclusion that in this day and age I need both a digital and a paper planner, calendar, agenda, whatever you want to call it. I need my phone to make appointments when I'm out and about or I don't have my planner to hand, but I find just using a phone too fiddly and doesn't allow me to really see it that well. And I just like having that thing that's a very visual, physical presence to remind me of the existence of time and days, I guess. Of course, having these two things working together means there is often conflicting or incomplete information in each one. So making sure that each side is synced for the week, if not the month ahead, is kind of crucial. And you might find it easier to just use digital or paper, but as a member of Team Both, if you are like me, you can't skip this, because you'll make a mess. So make sure that the sync stage doesn't get forgotten. And to be honest, you need to make sure that all the tools you use are kind of agreeing with each other. All the data is the same. Otherwise, it all falls apart very easily. So with regards to digital, I use Google Calendar because old habits, I guess. Any digital calendar will do. Currently, I use the Clever Fox weekly planner, which is dateless, so you fill in the dates, and I have spoken about before, but I'm going to get a new Clever Fox one for the upcoming school year, sort of end of August, early September, and I'd really like to try the Daily Pro version of the Clever Fox system, because I really like it, but it's a little bit small, and I want something to organize both my home and my work life in one place, so I think I'll need that extra space. So if you're interested in the Clever Fox planner, I've linked it all below. Now, if it wasn't super obvious, how I actually sync these two things is I look on my paper planner and check that everything that is there is in my digital one, and then I do the same thing the other way around. So I look on my digital and check that everything there is written into my paper. So the two sides have the same information. This is pretty straightforward, it's not difficult, but it is crucial, so I'm kind of hammering the point home, aren't I? And I do this step before I time block and plan my week. This is just for appointments and external kind of commitments, because I use my paper planner as my main reference for the week, so I don't actually have to have everything duplicated into both. I don't need that digital side filled in. So you might want to put the sync stage on in a different order if you like having all the information everywhere, but it really depends on your system. Moving on to step 3, which is the planning phase. And this is probably the most time-consuming step. You need to make sense of all your appointments, your things to do, things to remember, and create a plan for the week ahead that makes sense. I'm a very visual person, as I've mentioned quite a lot, so I need to be able to really see it. And time blocking my days has worked in the past, but it is very labor intensive, and making too much work for myself at the planning stage kind of sets me up to drop it at some point when things get overwhelming, and that's not a sustainable system. And honestly, I would love to have my days fully time blocked and constant order and organization in my life, maybe a PA at some point. But I do what I can, and I'm by no means perfect, and this means also not setting my expectations too high. I'm sure when I am a big fancy YouTuber and I have a PA, I will get my personal assistant to time block my days for me and otherwise be the kindergarten teacher that I apparently still need. But until that point, until I have somebody micromanaging my day for me, I do need to leave myself the flexibility to fail and not mess up the whole system when I do. And if you're wondering, yes, I know, I probably do have comorbid ADHD, you don't need to send me any more emails. So what I do is basically kind of like time blocking light. Once I have an overview of the external commitments and appointments, things that can't be moved basically, I look to make time for me to complete my internal commitments, as it were. So I'll set times, for example, when I need to work on writing my scripts or filming days or my Sunday reset or whatever. I'll take care of the big tasks that require more time, more focus, and are the priorities basically. These are the things that absolutely must get done. And You can think of it as putting your big rocks in your jar before the small rocks. There's a saying, like, you have rocks, pebbles and sand, and if you fill up the jar with sand first, you won't fit the big rocks in, but if you put your big rocks in place, you can tip little rocks and then sand, and everything fits somehow. Your schedule is kind of like this. You need to put the big, unmovable things in place and fit all the little bits around it, like sand. And essentially, it's very rough time blocking, so you know what you're going to be doing for most of the week. And during this pandemic time, I have found that this structure is so helpful in keeping me going for the week. But you really don't want to forget your little rocks or your grains of sand. My brain seems to have a lot of sand in it at the moment. I think that might be stress. So planning also involves setting up my to-dos. Yes, another system. I use Todoist as kind of like my master to-do list, and then I look at the priorities and I transfer my week's to-dos onto post-it notes. Yes, another system, which I use with the so-called personal Kanban method. So this is very confusing, but basically the personal Kanban method is post-its on a whiteboard. So you have 3 columns, which is to do, doing and done. And every time you move one of the post-its over, you can see the progress that you've made. It's very visual and it's quite helpful. And I'll do a video on this later if you like, but the reason that this works is I can quickly see, first of all, when I'm in the planning stage, if I'm overloading myself for the week. I can also see how much I'm getting done, whether the week's going well during the week. So I can say, well, maybe I planned too much, or like, yeah, I'm really killing this week, yeah. That doesn't happen so often. But it's really nice being able to get a very tangible sense of what I've been able to accomplish during the week. And then literally at the end of every week, you start with a blank slate. And that is a really helpful reset in a very, very concrete way. And the reason that I think this works is that my master to-do list sits there in the background. It's got everything that needs to be done, theoretically, but the post-it notes give me that focus rather than overwhelming me seeing, look at all this stuff that needs to be done ever. Where do I start? Kind of thing. So I really like this because it's physical, I stick it on the back of the door, and it's greatly satisfying to complete. Moving on to step 4, which is automation, and probably the only step that can't be done on paper, unless you have some very well-trained carrier pigeons, perhaps.
Look, Brenda, it's time to get up. Come on, Brenda. Come on, get up. Get up.
The app I use for automation is called Tiimo, and you might have seen a previous video I did on exactly how I use that app to organise my week. But essentially this is the way that I can set and forget everything that's going on, which reminds me when I need to start something, but also how long I have to complete each task. So I don't get distracted, basically. It sends notifications and vibrations to my smartwatch, and you can use the mobile app also if you don't have a smartwatch. I consider Tiimo the final piece of the puzzle, as it were, that helps the whole system run smoothly and gives me that extra security and knowledge that I won't forget things. Whether it's to take dinner out of the freezer, remember to take meds, remind me when I need to go and pick up my kid, and generally keep me going during difficult days. So if you want to see exactly how I do that, do have a look at the video that I did on Tiimo alone. It's linked below. This system makes sense and works for me, but I don't want you to think that it's a magical solution and I'm constantly organised because of it. You have to prioritise and schedule your weekly reset, otherwise it will start getting rather messy. I could possibly use fewer apps and have a much simpler system, and it might, for example, make sense to keep all my to-dos in Google Keep rather than Todoist, but I kind of like Todoist, so I'm not sure about that. You can always tweak your system, and I will likely tweak mine in the future. Because I think having gone over it, my system might be a little bit complicated, and I could simplify. But this is also real life, this is exactly what I do every week, and it is the process of finding out what works for you. And I'm not at that perfect point yet, I'm still refining. But I do want to address the fact that no amount of organisational systems or tools are going to help if the problem is something else. And that should be taken seriously and addressed as well. With our neurodivergent brains, we do have limits on things, and if you exceed that on a regular basis, there's no system on earth that will help, and you'll probably be constantly, chronically burnt out. If you feel that you're constantly being burnt out, it might not be the organizational system that you need to change. You might just need to essentially redesign your life so it's more sustainable for you in the long term. And for me, I've been absolutely privileged to have the support I've had from the Dutch government, essentially. But that was very hard for me to accept because it really reinforced all these labels that I'd been putting on myself, but especially the big L word, which is lazy. And how do I put this? If you are trying, constantly trying, and not achieving what a neurotypical person could, That doesn't make you lazy. That's not what lazy is. Because lazy is not trying. Lazy is not giving a crap. So if you're trying, please stop calling yourself lazy. I banned myself from using this word about myself and said, okay, don't think of yourself like this because it's not true. Think of yourself as having particular limits or having limited mental bandwidth or whatever. If you drop these labels that either other people have used to call us or that you've kind of internalized and call yourself, and look at it in terms of personal limits, you can give yourself permission to need help. And it's been really hard for me to ask for help because
I'm so high functioning.
Because I feel like I should be able to do it by myself. But my point is, if you struggle with systems, maybe the systems do need tweaking, but maybe also you simply need more help, and that's okay. So I don't want to overload anyone by thinking that you have to do all these things that I do, because this is just the way that I've managed to design my life to kind of make it all fit. Thank you so much to Tiimo for sponsoring this video. They are a really great company that I am so proud to work with. So please go check them out, whether it's my video that I did last time or the link that I've got in the description box below. And I have one more video coming out in this executive functioning trilogy, which I guess makes it Return of the Jedi. So please stick around for that one, where I will be doing a kind of life reset after the summer holidays in preparation for the rest of 2020. Because yes, 2020 is still going. We have 5 more months of it. So let's try and make it good, better, if not probably the best. Hope all is well with you guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye. We'll call it the Bergerga method.
I really hope you guys have seen Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, because otherwise this whole joke is going to make no sense whatsoever.